AJ Brown has been a name that I think a lot of people have kind of seen the handwriting on the wall with him. He's kind of, remember back in the day and age in the NFL when every NFL wide receiver, at least all of the really good ones, had diva-like qualities. I would say AJ Brown is similar to that, but on a much watered down scale. I don't think he's as bad as everyone makes him out to be. But of course, playing in a market like Philadelphia, things can tend to get blown out of proportion. But the big question this year is, will AJ Brown be in Philadelphia by week 1 of next year? Nick Sirianni was asked that, and he said, quote, will AJ be here next season? I think we're still in a spot like I can't guarantee how anything is going to play out into next season. I'm thinking I'm going to be the coach next season, but you can't guarantee anything past tomorrow, which is extremely true. But Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer believes, based on, quote, sources close to several Eagles, that a decision will be made sooner than later. Look, I'm a Titans fan. I remember fondly where I was, what I was doing when A.J. Brown was traded on draft night a few years ago. A.J. Brown, to me, is a dynamic player, a guy, he can be a game changer. Emphasis on can be. There are times he's not, times he checks out, times he reads books on sidelines. But I don't know if necessarily getting parting ways with AJ Brown. I know financially it's, you have to work it into the books, but just from a 30,000 foot view, I don't think it's a great move for the Eagles to move on from AJ Brown, right?
Well, I think it can be, because if they get out early, if before he becomes, and he's getting to that point where I think you could argue right now he will turn what, 29, I think, this upcoming season. You could argue that he's getting to that point where he's going to be past his prime, and that could happen very quickly. He is owed a great deal of money, about $29 million, fully guaranteed for this upcoming season. If they can get some draft capital out of a deal, then I think it would actually benefit the Eagles quite a bit to do that. The problem they're running into, and there was the report about the Patriots who had some interest, but they felt like Philadelphia's asking price was, and I believe the word they used was unserious, that maybe the
Yeah.
Eagles are willing to hang on to him, so they're going to ask for way more than they're probably going to get, which is the right move. That's the thing you do. And if you're Philly and you feel like you're still close, and I think they could very easily win a Super Bowl coming up here next season. If you think you're close, you want to hang on to your core, and that's perfectly fine. So you overplay your hand a bit. You see what you can get back. You see if some team bites, and then great. Maybe you've gotten some really good draft capital out of it. But I think that for them long term, if they can get out of this deal and they could get some, get some draft picks in return, you could really set yourself up well, save some money, and maybe avoid getting to that point where he's no longer productive. Now, I don't expect him to not be productive this year, but there's that possibility that a guy can hit a wall, right? I mean, that could very well happen with him. And if you get out early, you'd rather be there than getting out late, unless, of course, you're going to win a Super Bowl, then it doesn't really matter, right? But that's a pretty big gamble. The problem they're going to run into is there are a lot of other receivers out there that are going to be available potentially. DK, who we talked about earlier, DK Metcalf could be available. Kind of looks like the Bears might be willing to move on from DJ Moore. So there are going to be other receivers that are available. And in this draft, it's supposed to be a heavy receiver draft. Maybe not any number one guys or a bunch of number ones, but you're going to have a lot of really good value at the receiver position late in the draft and in, maybe in day 2 or even 3. So I don't know that the Eagles are going to get what they're asking for from him, but if they can move on, it may not be the worst thing in the world for them.
I think the handwriting on the wall has led to the belief that, if the Eagles do move on, the Patriots are the team that he'll end up with, whether it be, by trade or whatever. As you said earlier, like the unserious was the quote thrown around this week about, the Eagles asking price for Brown. But if there is a reunion or excuse me, if AJ Brown does go to the Patriots, that will bring the reunion of him with Mike Vrabel, as they spent time together in Tennessee. And recently, AJ Brown went on a podcast and talked about how he used to hate Vrabes, like to the point where he would go middle school schoolgirl on his notepads, just writing it over and over. He said, quote, Vraves is the type of coach that he's going to call on you in the meetings. He wants to make sure you're staying engaged, and he's going to go over the keys to victory of the week. You better know them by the back of your hand. I used to write in my notebook because at the time I really didn't like Vraves. I didn't like him, and I admit that he knows that. So I used to write, quote, I hate Vrabes. I hate Vrabes. I hate Vrabes. I was doing that to pretend
That's
like I
so
was
good.
taking notes to look like I was engaged, but because he was so hard on me when I was a rookie and I really didn't understand it. So at the time I told Vrabes, like, hey, I'm humble already. You don't got to humble me. But I really didn't understand what he was trying to, push me to be. So do you think he
That's
still
so
has
funny.
the old notebooks that have I hate Braves on it all the time? It's like the kid in the back of the classroom, who's just like, just done with life and, wearing all black and carving Metallica lyrics into their desk. Like that was how I imagine AJ Brown was in the team meetings, just, carving I hate Braves into his notebook.
Metallica lyrics. Now you've aged yourself. First you had Mike Hall doing it. Now you've done it. No, that's.
What
I
do I
think
do?
that's
Should I go
very
my
funny. What?
Chemical Romance? I don't know.
Yeah. What a man. What a that'd be a really great bit of sports memorabilia to have is the AJ Brown notebook where he was writing how much he hated Mike Vrabel. But maybe a second time around, that'd be a great tandem again. Get him back in, and then clearly he appreciates what Vrabel was trying to do for him, and that's why he was
Sure.
talking about it in the first place. So that could be a really nice situation for him if he ends up going there. And I know I said the stuff earlier about him, maybe hitting a wall. I don't expect that. I'm talking about it from the Eagles' perspective, who they do owe him a good chunk of money for this upcoming season.
Sure.
They could give themselves a little cap relief. They could potentially get out before he does hit the wall. And that's a gamble. Of course, that's a gamble. But I don't expect him to be unproductive the upcoming season. What he does beyond that, I couldn't tell you. But again, he's getting closer to 30. And we know that that's a number that a lot of receivers, you get to that point and maybe you're just not what you once were. And I guess that's true of a lot of players in the NFL.
Yeah, I think there's an epidemic in the NFL where we're always looking to the future, almost to a disadvantage to some teams, where it's like playing the stock market, right? Like you're trying to sell,
Get out
sell
too early
high,
before you get
buy
out too
low.
late. Yeah.
Right, right. And, living and working in Nashville for the longest time, like I saw it every year with Derrick Henry. And it was like, well, I think it's time to move on with Derrick Henry. We want to move on from him sooner rather than later. Well, eventually the Titans and Derrick Henry kind of had a mutual breakup and they went their separate ways. And Derrick Henry has continued to dominate in Baltimore. And I think you see that a lot of times in the NFL. Obviously, look at Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, right? Like they
Yeah.
were like, okay, it's time to kind of go our separate ways. Well, surely enough, I mean, granted, Tom Brady, inherited a top three offense in Tampa Bay. And they just basically replaced Jameis Winston for Tom Brady and won a Super Bowl with that team. But he still had more left in the tank. And I just feel like we, as especially fans, we have like kind of put our GM hats on too much, and we're always looking like, well, yeah, we better get rid of AJ Brown now because he could hit a wall. And I feel like there are exceptions to that rule, and AJ Brown seems to me, much like a DK Metcalf or a Derrick Henry, would be like an exception to that rule.
So I agree with you, except there's a difference now in the NFL with quarterback and receiver. And I know you know this, but in terms of the physical demands, being a quarterback, yeah, you can still get hit, and they do, but the rules have protected them so much that they're not taking the big hits they used to take. So it's not inconceivable to be 42 and still productive. Look at Aaron Rodgers. He's like 100 and he's still pretty productive. He's not what he used to be, but he's still pretty good. But if you're running routes, you're gonna, if you're running routes and you're having to juke and you're having to beat defenders all the time, and you're going up against defenses and they are out for you, and they, sometimes you take big hits being a receiver, you're going to wear down a little quicker than I think a quarterback will. And again, I know Brown's not we're not talking about a 35-year-old player. He's not even 30 yet. It's just that, and here I am playing with the Eagles roster and money, and I don't have a rooting interest in it. I'm just saying that for them, it may not be the dumbest decision if they can move on for him, get something in return that they can turn into roster pieces later on. Because there's always that possibility that you just hang on a little bit too long to a player and he's not helping you like he used to.
Okay, so let's say AJ Brown is on the move for sure, which, I mean, it's looking like it's going to be that, but you never know until you know. We obviously threw out the Patriots as a potential offer, but I hate Vrabel. I hate Vrabel is still written all over that notebook for AJ Brown.
Good.
No, I think he would very welcome a reunion with Vrabes. But what about the other teams where AJ Brown could land? Obviously, you got a team like Baltimore who could use the weapons, and I think Lamar Jackson, with the disappointing season that they had in Baltimore, they could use a boost like that. But then you look at teams like the Buffalo Bills, who I'm pretty sure, I don't know why, but Keon Coleman might not be in a Bills uniform next year, just based off of his owner throwing him under the bus. So they could be looking for more wide receiver talent. You got the Cleveland Browns are always in need of some help with their young quarterbacks, whether it be Shador Sanders or Deshaun Watson if he comes back. Where do you see AJ Brown potentially going next year?
I think all those are really good bets, and I like the idea of pairing him with a younger quarterback who could need a little veteran presence. That is an exceptional thought because, look, I mean, if you're Jalen Hurts, right, you don't necessarily need a veteran out there. I mean, you're a vet yourself now at this point. You've done it. You've been around. So you might be better suited with the addition of a younger receiver. Bring him into the mix, right? So I think for Brown, at this time of his career, he could end up helping a quarterback. And it's funny that you mentioned the Keon Coleman thing. That situation is really, it's too bad because coming out of the draft last year, he was one of those guys I thought, man, I really like this dude. And I think Buffalo fans are probably going to really like him a lot. So it's a shame that it's gotten to that point with the Bills for Keon Coleman. That's just a little sidebar from me because I really liked him coming out of the draft.